Bring in Maurice Clarett. Maurice, one of the things that we talked about in the first 30 minutes of the show is our confidence level, where it is on whether or not the Browns can beat the Bengals Monday night. G and I were low men on the totem pole. We have a 2 on 1 to 10 on the confidence meter. Where are you that the Browns will beat the Bengals Monday night?
Yeah, I think I might be in line with y'all with it, too.
2 games.
I was hoping you would cheer us up, Maurice.
I can't believe I'm the confident one at 5.
I know. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So why are you at 2?
I mean, I think the same reason everybody else is at 2. Just not looking good for my boys, man. I looked up. I was following the news when they on Twitter they had Kareem Hunt trending about being traded, and I was just kind of like looking at old articles. And I've been in the hospital with my lady all month, so I had a chance to catch up on old articles and just what's going on in the NFL. And man, the Browns have been looking bad for quite some time, and it's only so much hope you can have before you start to get the realization, like, man, something has to change relatively fast in order for the season to turn around.
We talked perhaps about a coaching change at the bye. That's when teams tend to do not a head coaching change, just a coach on the staff, a coordinator, somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Just Brad always says on the show, you got to lop someone's head off to get the other guy's attention in the room. Do you buy that there needs to be a sacrificial lamb for everybody to kind of look around and say, oh, it's getting real?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a change of pace, and believe it or not, he's right that you have to give somebody else who may be better at using the pieces that you have. Like, I can't even believe that we're sitting here talking about trading Kareem Hunt when you had these 2 powerhouses at the top of the season, and you had to learn how to distribute the ball. Somebody should have learned how to distribute the ball a little bit better and get these guys more acclimated. You have all offseason to do that. You know what I mean? And so if it was me, I would look to make a change and look to move. You have to keep the fan base interested. You know what I mean? You have to keep the franchise viable to bring other players in and say, hey, these guys may have a chance. But when you're tanking and it becomes a cleaving of old, and then you've moved on from, it used to be Baker, and then it's this situation now, it's just more the same. Just more, I don't know, it's just back to Loserville, if I can say it lightly.
Boy, that's what it feels like. It really does.
Maurice, do you know Joe Burrow at all?
It's the irony, I went to a football camp maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, probably longer than that now. You get a little older and time tends to it blurs,
tell me
right?
about it.
And he was in high school, and I went down to a football camp in Athens, and there was like, that's this kid Joe Burrows, and I didn't know his name at the time, but I took a picture with him, and it's on my Instagram from a while back, and I couldn't believe it was the same kid who I grew up and had become what he is now. But I know of him, and we took a picture with each other, but I don't know him personally. But I'm happy for the young guy.
There's something about there's certain players in the NFL, and I don't mean to compare him to Tom Brady, but I've heard a lot of people say he's got that intangible. I don't even know what it is. I feel like as a former great player yourself, you might know. What is that thing he has that some of the special guys have, like that intangible?
Yeah, it's clear. Yeah. No, it's the understanding of the game. So you can look at his time at Ohio State in a few different ways, right? And so I looked at it as like he had time to develop around very great players. You had a chance to go out and practice versus number one defensive backs and linebackers and defensive tackles the whole time. You were coached very well, and you had a chance just to prepare without so much scrutiny. There's a lot of guys who they have the potential to do a lot, but throughout their journey they'll get criticized a lot. Then you start second guessing yourself. But when he was here at Ohio State, he just had guys who fit better within these schemes. So that's why he went down to LSU, and he had a bunch of success immediately because he was a little bit older, in comparison to the other kids who were around. And I just think that once you get all those reps, I'm a huge – if you ever hear me talk to anybody about collegiate sports in general, the only way you get better is reps. And if you're repping on the scout team, if you're repping just in the off season, whatever it is, I just think that Joe Burrows – if you set him down and he was at the end of his career, they say, man, what really happened? I think he'll say, man, I just had a huge amount of reps against quality people at Ohio State when I was there.
Wow.
And that transferred down to LSU. And then obviously when he went on with the Bengals, once you play at Ohio State, then you go to the SEC and dominate. You're basically playing the same kids, once you go to the NFL. Not kids, but the same people, to some degree.
I had a former NFL quarterback make this analogy, and I want to get your thoughts on it and see if you think this has anything to do with Burrow's success. He told me that he started by talking about computers and the size of the processor in the computer. He said, you can have the best looking computer in the world. It can be, solid gold and shiny, and it looks beautiful. But if you put the wrong processor in it, the wrong chip, it's going to perform slowly. So it looks beautiful, but it performs slowly. Then this quarterback gave me the analogy, and it was oddly enough, he used Bernie Kosar. He said, or you can have a broken down exterior of a computer that you would look at and say, well, I don't want to use that computer. That thing it's got no power. It's not going to do anything. But you put this high-speed processing chip inside of it, and he said that's what Bernie Kosar was. Bernie Kosar at his pro days and at the NFL Combine, guys were looking at, he didn't have that. He came out in the supplemental draft, but back then everybody was assessing his skill set, and they said, yeah, somehow this guy gets it done and he wins, but he's not going to be a prototypical NFL quarterback, and he was because of his processor. Somebody else told me that Joe Burrow's processor is Tom Brady's processor. Rapid fire, very quick, always making the right read in real time, and that's what separates him from everybody else. Do you buy that, or is there something else going on?
No, just think about what I said. So where do you get all of these reps? You're in a film room, you're around all these quarterbacks, and you're hearing the coach repeat yourself over and over again, right? Then when you go to practice, you're on the scout team going against the first team defense. You follow me? So you're playing against your Denzel Wards. You're playing against all of those defensive backs that came out of Ohio State for the last 4 or 5 years. These are the people that you're competing with at practice. You feel where I'm coming from? And so as he's doing this, he has to be getting better. He goes to LSU, he has to be getting better. There's another factor that plays into this. When you're the number one pick or you're the guy to go to LSU and they brought you from Ohio State, there's no pressure to feel like, hey man, I have to succeed. You're like settled in. It's like the running back who has to switch time with another guy. And what ends up happening is he's trying to make a big play just to get or just to justify why he should be on the field. In comparison, to saying, hey man, you want to get 20 carries and just go ahead and play your game. And I think Joe Burrow's he's created a situation for himself leaving Ohio State, going to LSU, and then you create the grace period for yourself when you get to the NFL. And I just say it like this, I hate to bring it back to myself, but it is myself. There's a lot of guys who are a lot more talented, right? And with other guys being talented, they just didn't understand the game. And one of my biggest things that separated me from other guys was understanding the game. If you go back and you look at some of the people who ended up being premier athletes at Ohio State, when these guys got to campus, they didn't understand the game. And so for me, Joe Burrow's probably understanding that he probably wasn't a great scrambler. He probably didn't, from an attribute standpoint, stack up to the guys who were there, Dwayne Haskins and those other guys who were at Ohio State. You have to find what is your competitive advantage. Your competitive advantage is when I walk to the line, do I understand where the ball is going, right? All the great quarterbacks know what defensive front am I looking at, where's the ball going, or do I have a reasonable assumption of where it can go? And if I have these other variables, can I get the ball out quick? And then that's the stuff you're repping every practice. That's what makes you great. And then if you put the fact that, hey, I have a skill set, where I can drop back, I can get the ball in certain windows that somebody else couldn't. And I just think that's what it is. But, that can go to the argument of, should kids come out early and go to the NFL, or can some guys stay and develop? And I just think that, I don't know how old he is, but I would imagine if you spent 5 years in college, you're a little bit older than other people. But I think all of that development work, helped him. And maybe for other positions it may be different, but for quarterbacks, I think if you don't have the ability to make very sound decisions in a super intense and manipulating look from defenses and people running around and masking coverages, you can't be great. But he's obviously figured that out.
Maurice, you said something a couple of minutes ago. You talked about, kind of the thought process with the same old Browns type situation. I think that for me, I'm a little apprehensive, and I don't want it to get to this point. I can go back and look and say that, for a while, the Browns never got players like Jarvis Landry or Odell Beckham Jr., right? They never were even in contention for those guys. Then you got a guy like Kareem Hunt. My thing is the way that those guys left, right? And then they go other places and they're successful. And then when I saw Kareem Hunt was on the block, for me, I just felt like I didn't want to get back to a place where the perception of, with other free agents, with other players is Cleveland is just a place you come to end your career or cash checks and not really win. For a 3 to 4 year period, it seemed like Cleveland was a destination place where people thought it was an upstart place to go play. My thing is, I don't want it to get to a point where now it becomes, well, if you go to Cleveland, you ain't going to get the ball. If you go to Cleveland, they ain't going to put you in a position to make no plays. And I think it's very important that as you get Deshaun Watson in here, you still are a place where you can appeal to younger players, and players will play hard. Do you think that could be an issue if they can't figure out a way to get their playmakers the ball that they already have right now?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's what it feels like the reputation has turned into. You bring in these high-profile, notable guys who you, like, I guess on paper and in your imagination, you would think to yourself, like, man, how is it Odell or Jarvis Landry? How couldn't these guys succeed? How couldn't you succeed with Kareem out in the backfield, right? At some point, and this is like, I don't know, I'm just a little bit more ruthless. At some point, it isn't the guys. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes coaches are good people. They're charismatic. They're people you invite over to a barbecue and you hug them and you walk them to a podium. But at some point, my man, the person who's driving that train, the person who's making that decisions, you're not getting it done. And I don't want to tank the franchise just as much as, one coach isn't bigger than the team, one player isn't bigger than the team. I would have to put somebody in a seat who's driving the Browns, who's driving a different conversation, who's using all this firepower we have, who's setting the table basically for Deshaun Watson to come back and to build upon. But look, even the nature of the conversation we're having, like this is not even midway through the season and we're talking about this. You know what I mean? It's just like it's the loser atmosphere again. It's these conversations where we should be talking about winning and who do you get the ball and how many touches does Kareem Hunt have on a consistent basis. And I know you can't get everybody the ball every game, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem what was expected isn't what we're seeing now. And I think y'all said the same thing prior to me coming on about Denzel Ward, like what everybody expected out of the defense. You remember me go back to my interviews talking about, I wish that we were I was so gung-ho about the Browns defense and I was so happy and so elated, but I don't feel that way anymore. And a lot of that stuff just comes to coaching, right? You can take this back. This is not this isn't specialized to the Browns, right? You can have the same players but different coaches and get a totally different outcome. And that comes from the coach having the ability to influence the player. And a player will, and I know this is like, I wish I had a better analogy, but the run through the wall mentality, right? Tom McDaniels, we both know him, right? Mm-hmm. This man was so invested into players. This is just on a high school level. I used to say to myself, there's nothing I wouldn't do for this dude. My running back coach, there's nothing I wouldn't do for this dude. The same thing with Jim Tressel. There's nothing I wouldn't do with this dude, right? So all that happened. I go to prison. I come out of prison. There was this guy named Bart Andrus, right? And God bless him. I don't say rest his soul because he's not passed away, but God bless him. But he couldn't move men to save his life. You know what I mean? He was a guy, and he was so big on, I'm going to call my plays, and it was like this forceful nature of where he was trying to influence players. And it just wasn't me. This was just through the team. And it would always be like this blaming mentality towards other guys, like, oh, it's these guys' fault, it's that guy's fault, and like a loser mentality. And so I don't know those guys, but I've been around enough people within business, within sports, within everything that I can go to Browns practice for 1 or 2 days, and you can see who's leading that campaign. And just because somebody's an offensive coordinator or a head coach of a professional team doesn't mean that they may be equipped to lead those guys. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
but there's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason you have all of this talent, literally all of this talent right down the street, and you don't have a better outcome than what it is. There's no reason that we can sit here and say you have 2 of the better running backs in the National Football League, and we understand football is a game of matchups, and you don't figure out how to get these guys the ball. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It becomes frustrating. It would be the same thing if, like, in Columbus they're winning now, right? Ohio State has to go to Penn State this week, and they'll test their mettle on the road, but you don't get all of these 5-star recruits here in town and you not win or you not beat people. But I feel the same way about the Browns. That's my 2 cents.
No, that makes perfect sense, and I couldn't agree more. You always wonder what could this group of players do with another coach, and it's maddening sometimes. Before we let you go, Maurice, we had Jim Tressel on earlier this week, and and he brought, I don't know if you saw it, but he brought your name up. But there was a clip that we really wanted to play for you and get your reaction to it. Gives Maurice Clarett high praise. So pay attention to this clip from Jim Tressel, and we'll ask you about it on the other side, guys.
Okay.
Maurice, just an extraordinary talent, made a huge impact on Ohio State football. One could argue that him coming to Ohio State at the beginning of this century might have been the single most important thing that turned the fortunes of Ohio State football where it is today. That if you look at the seasons from this century, the Buckeyes have always been in the conversation. And his coming to Ohio State and the difference he made might have arguably been as important as anything.
Pretty high praise, Maurice. What do you have to say about that?
Oh, I agree with him.
Hey, listen, he's not wrong. I was in Columbus covering the Buckeyes from 93 to 98, and though personally I love John Cooper, the program just couldn't get over that Michigan hump, and I think Jim's accepting the job at Ohio State, and in particular you playing your freshman year there and winning a national championship, like that's where it all began in this modern domination.
Yeah, and I said it jokingly, but I was being serious. But there's a lot that goes into all these things, right? And there may be a sense of like confidence, but then also like humility in what I'm talking about. Remember, I told you all you need like a disruptive individual on any team, right? And you need somebody to challenge current talent. You need somebody to challenge your teammates. You need somebody to be brave. You need somebody to speak of the unachievable. And you need somebody to basically outwork everybody, right? And all of those things at that moment in the realm of football, we're not talking about the maturity as a man, like just because I didn't have enough life experiences, but for all those things with the sport, I provided that. And I was aware of that at 18 years old, right? And so I was testing people. I was testing other teammates. I was testing Miami. I was testing Michigan. I was testing our own football players. I was testing who thought they were good. I was telling guys that they were lazy. I was playing on scout team. And so I was doing it all with the purpose of trying to get better, but to have so much pride, right? Because I remember I went to the national championship, or not the national championship, the Army All-American game, and I would get so tired of these guys from Texas just having so much pride in Texas football, and they just disregarded Ohio like it was just like this farm nation that nothing special came out of. And we came down and we played. And, a lot of stuff has happened since then, but one thing you see, I wear it with pride. One thing I can say is that in a moment in time, I gave everything I had. I contributed to a place from an athletic standpoint and the profile of the university raised. I can say that, and I'm aware of that. And I wish that we went on and we did some more, but where it started then, and then you have, those guys, bringing in better recruits and bringing all those guys in from Glenville and people being happy about staying in the state and people wanting to play here and this being a place. And then obviously, they brought Urban in after and did another one and where it's at now. But just like anything else, everybody on this show was or is a part of something special. Even when I see this, just to see where this show has grown to, basically from where we started. And I was like, wow, it's like it kind of looks cool and it's always in the feed. And I follow everybody individually a little bit more. Like you never know where stuff is going to go. And I'm just happy I played a role in, what Ohio State is today.
No, you certainly did. Maurice, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. Enjoy the game Monday night. We'll have you back next week to talk about it. Hopefully we're talking about a team that's 3-5 and still alive and not 2-6 and 6 feet under. Maurice, thanks again. Always great to have you on. And I love this